Welcome to this webinar. It is sponsored by Lifelong Learning, as well as the eFormation Learning Community and Building Faith. And you can visit we can visit Lifelong Learning on our website, and then you'll also find links to the eFormation Learning Community and to Building Faith. We're glad you're here. We're going to introduce ourselves in a minute, but we'll go ahead and open up with prayer. And if you're just jumping on, feel free to keep putting your names and locations in the chat. So the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. All holy God, source of every blessing, we thank you for the mystery of growing up, the transformation of the body, mind, and spirit that brings children to adulthood. We marvel in this and all your works. Grant to parents and all who minister to children grace and courage, patience and good humor, respect and compassion, and unfailing hope as they travel together through life, united in Christ and his household, the church. Amen.
Amen.
I am Sarah Bentley Allred. I'll be serving as your host today. I am the Associate for Christian Formation and Discipleship at Lifelong Learning. We also, not pictured here, have Catherine Malloy helping us with the technology. Thank you, Catherine, for being there. She'll be helping monitor the chat and moving our slides. One of my main roles at Building Faith is to curate resources and to work on Building Faith, website Building Faith. And so I was super excited that Allison and Miriam were willing to join us today and help us explore a wide range of resources, particularly for celebrating saints and holy days at home. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Miriam.
Okay, hi, I'm Miriam McKenney, and I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I attend Calvary Episcopal Church, where I am the youth minister, and have been a godly play teacher in years past, following my children through that program. And I also am the Director of Development and Mission Engagement at Forward Movement.
And I am Allison Sandlin Liles. I live in Dallas currently. I'm the priest in charge of a small church named St. Stephen's, close to the DFW airport in the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth. And I am also the editor of growchristians.org, which is a ministry of Forward Movement. I have two little kids at home and spent 6 years out of parish ministry trying to figure out how to offer faith formation at home. So this is a really important topic for me. Thanks.
Thank you both for being here. So let me give you a quick overview of our time together today. We've had our welcome and our prayer and introduced ourselves. We're going to spend just a moment talking about what this webinar is and why we're here together. And then I'm going to hand it over to Allison and Miriam, who will talk about why we celebrate Saints and Holy Days. We'll have a space for questions, and then we'll talk about how to celebrate, have more time for questions. So if you have a question as we're going through, please pop it into the Q&A area and we'll keep an eye on that. And then at the end, we'll go through some tools and resources. All right. So why this webinar? I think that this is an important topic in this moment, as over the past year, we have been at home for so much time. And we're really starting to, I think a lot of us faith formation folks have known that formation really happens at home, but this is just really reinforced and affirmed that idea that we see young people for maybe an hour a week, if that, and they spend so much more time at home with their adults there. And so it's really an opportunity to take faith formation beyond the walls of the church into the home and figure out how we can equip adults to be doing this work specifically around saints and holy days. And Allison and Miriam will talk about why that's a good place to start. So again, please share your questions in the Q&A. And also we would absolutely love to see your ideas in the chat. It's one of the best part of webinars is getting ideas from each other in the chat. So please feel free to keep chatting away as we go. And I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Thanks, Sarah. So I mentioned that I spent 6 years at home when I was working part-time for Episcopal Peace Fellowship. And at that time, my kids were like 1 and 3. And I was approaching them like I would approach members of the churches that I had served who were adults, and that didn't work very well. And so Grow Christians came up around the time that I was struggling to figure out to find the right language to minister to them and to teach them. And as soon as I started paying attention, I realized that there were so many opportunities to talk about faith at home. And we turned to the liturgical calendar, particularly in those first couple years with some of the holy days, to really ground us and set our schedule and our pattern for the year. It also, as someone who is at home with young children in a new place, we had just moved, it gave us a lot of stuff to do. And so we would start with stories, and then we could transition into some sort of an activity. And then we would begin talking about it the rest of the day. And then when Daddy came home, we would have more things to talk about over dinner. And what I began finding is that the importance of celebrating these holy days and things that had been going on for centuries and centuries is that my family as an individual household was joining with Christians from, for the past 2,000 years. And so my kids were learning that they were just one part of God's bigger story. And they were beginning to be just a couple little tiny saints among all of the many, many, many saints of God and the great cloud of witnesses. And so that is why we started at home. And it's why I've been so committed to Grow Christians, because it's a way that we can share resources, knowing that we can't do it all on our own. I certainly am not the most creative person, but I'm really good at adapting other people's ideas. And so we share a lot of ideas and resources and activities, and which just furthers the idea that we're all in this together, learning from people who have walked this path before. I think that's about all I have for about holy days. Miriam, do you want to talk about why the saints have been so important to you?
Yeah, I agree really with a lot of the things that you said. I think, just as I'm a huge fan of tying things to scripture as much as I can in conversations, I have teenage and young adult daughters. My girls are 17, 21, and 25. So we have, I'm always trying to connect the dots from what they learned in godly play and how they can apply those things to their lives. And of course, that's all rooted in scripture. And so the folks who have, whether they're Bible saints, biblical saints, or modern day saints throughout history, it's a way to connect with those people who have walked lives of faith and done something exceptional or exemplary or amazing that we can then learn from. It's been really important for us as a family. But I want this slide here really directly comes from someone who is a friend, and she's on this seminar right now. So hopefully she will say something in the chat about this. So these were two things that she said when this seminar got shared on Facebook, and she posted, "Saints and Holy Days are one of the most comfortable ways I've found to do formation at home." I just loved comfortable. And she's an extremely creative person like Allison. Don't let Allison fool you by saying that she's not the most creative lady. You shake your head all you want. I'm just telling you what I know. But Di brought up a really important point that I think did resonate with me a lot as to why I didn't do more sharing of saints in particular. Feast days is not, I'm not saying it's a no-brainer, but I kind of struggled in connecting with some of the saints. And I think what she says here is why. This concept about talking about ancestors and people in that great cloud of witnesses who might not be in lesser feasts and fasts, but they're people who we think of as saints, and we can recognize those saintly qualities in them. And so she talks here about, I mean, dye is white, just to name that, what it is to be looking back on saints and reflecting on the folks who we want to emulate, and looking at histories that we don't want to really, it's difficult. I'll be completely transparent and say that the word that she used on Facebook isn't stink, but it's just, I substituted that, which I think still gets at this point. So I think what I want to say about what she said here is, thank you so much for acknowledging that, and for acknowledging that we must look beyond and look at the whole family. And if it's someone who doesn't look like you, let's remember that God created all of us in God's image. We are siblings in Christ, and we are God's beloved children. So we can see God in each other. And it doesn't matter if we don't have the same complexion or the same cultural history. We are all God's children, and therefore we are siblings. Also, though, I want to acknowledge there are a lot of white saints who are, there's in white history, there's a lot to celebrate. So while I think it is important to acknowledge there's some difficult aspects, there's also a lot to celebrate. So I just want to name that. And if those kinds of uncomfortable, conversations come up, just go with it, especially with your older kids with whom it might come up. So if your child says, how come there's so many saints who don't look like me? That's a legit question, and it's an opportunity to engage in a conversation about what does the community of God look like.
Yeah, I would add to that too. We had a situation on growchristians.org last fall where I assigned a well-known older white bishop in the Episcopal Church, old, like centuries ago, for someone to write about, not knowing his full history. And there was a tremendous uproar about him because of his legacy. It's not just that he did these wonderful things as a bishop, but he did some really horrific, unjust things as well that I did not learn about in seminary. I only learned the good things. And so it was a wonderful teaching moment for all of us. And to recognize too, when we're having those conversations with our kids, is that even the people who are lifted up and lauded as saints are still human beings. And so they're not these people who are unattainable, that they are, they're the saints of God. Like there's so many of them. And so that you're able to find one who really speaks to you, and find the ones who have messed up and then have kept going anyway, just like we all do.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, particularly about why to celebrate saints and holy days at home, or why to equip parents to do this, go ahead and click on the Q&A to send your question to us. We might rephrase or combine if we get some similar questions. And we'll cover as much as we can, but we might not get to everything. I do want to mention one more thing that Di said in the chat about why it was comfortable, because I think maybe Allison and Miriam, if you wanted to say something else about why it might be comfortable to, if you have anything else to add about why it's comfortable to talk about saints at home. She said it's partly because they're finite. And when we celebrate saints days, you're not committing to a 12-week unit, which I absolutely love. You can just take one day and play with it as a particular focus. So I don't know if either of you want to speak to that, but I thought that was a wonderful point. You don't have to bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah, I think, that's kind of how we do it in our house. There are so many long-standing traditions for a lot of saints. And so it's really easy to know that, on December 6th, like the kids are going to put their shoes out and they might get fruit in them the next morning for St. Nicholas Day. And so it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing, like Lent. Like we think about the season of Lent, and the kids they already know they're going to have to fast from something and it's going to last a really long time. And then we're the enforcers that have to keep up that practice. I think that these individual days are so much fun. And it helps for us. It's helped us come up with dinner and dessert ideas, because I like to tie in our dinner meal to whatever saint that we're observing that day.
I agree with that too. I think it's also particularly helpful for the more challenging saints. Like I just happened to be at the doctor's office this morning with my daughter, and I had my copy of Growing Christians, and I was flipping through it, and I read Allison's section about December 28th, the Holy Innocents. Now that's a really, really difficult day to talk about, but also very important too. But we're not going to have to do it tomorrow. We're going to do it this day, and then the next day there's another saint to celebrate. So I think it's great for a lot of reasons.
Awesome. Well, we're not seeing many questions at this time, so let's keep going, and there will be another opportunity a little bit later on.
I will go ahead and just affirm everyone's saying to check out Jerusalem's book. Just check out all her stuff. Go to her website. I'll try to put it in the chat. I'm a former librarian, so I'm a super chatter and looker up of stuff, except when I'm presenting. But please, she's got a lot of wonderful resources and really just so much to do at home. It's a really great resource.
So we thought that a way that we could break this down for us today is to talk about the different age groups, because the things that I was doing with a 3-year-old are probably going to be a little bit different than what Miriam would be doing with a 20-year-old child at home. So I was going to start by just talking about like literally what we did first with small children. And so this is like the preschool, elementary age group. And then I'll pass over to Miriam for the tweens and youth. We can go on to the next slide. Yeah. So our big rule in our house is that we try to always have hands busy whenever we're doing a teaching moment. So picture books are great because the art would draw them in. And we have on growchristians.org just so many book recommendations, especially from one of our contributors named Emily Watkins, who does a fantastic job incorporating holy days and saints into the lives of her sons. But as I mentioned before, we really love using recipes, and then I love a good craft, especially when it's spelled out for me what we need to do. And so typically the way that we would do it is I would read a story, whether it's something that I've gotten out of a book or I read about on Grow Christians that morning, and would put it in the language that I knew that my kids could handle. And so for me, I just didn't want to go into that conversation without any knowledge at all. And so I can regurgitate what I've read and put it in the language that I know will best fit with the age of my kids at home or the kids at church. And so as I'm reading, I would have them do something with their hands. Either they're building with Legos, the story that I'm reading, or they're going to be drawing or using like thinking putty or modeling clay. And then afterwards, ask some really good godly play, I wonder questions to find out what part of the day or what part of the saint's life they felt like was the most interesting. I wonder what part was the scariest. I wonder what you think you could do if you were in that situation. And then we would end that with some sort of an activity where I'm not talking, but that's when the conversation tends to happen from them. And I would always find that when we would take our late afternoon walk with our dog, that the conversation would just keep going. Because anybody like who's around little children knows that it doesn't stop when your activity's over. So like when they're brushing their teeth, like another existential question about the saint that we've studied would come up, and then they would need to come talk to me about it again. So that is that's what we do with the youngest children. And again, with books, Miriam mentioned that she is a librarian by training, and she has a really, really great collection of children's books, especially books that were written by authors of color and or have illustrations that depict children or members of the church body or the early church or Jesus's people that are not blue-eyed and blonde-haired. And so her resources have been really helpful for us as we've tried to expand our home library as well. Yeah. So Miriam, would you like to talk about tweens and teens?
Sure. I think, one thing I will say right out of the gate is that what Allison said about younger children applies, I think, it can apply to everyone, but it definitely applies to tweens and teens in that you talk about something with them and then it'll be even days later, it comes back up. So, just expect that the questions will keep coming, especially if what you're sharing is somebody asked about something to share in 5 minutes. If you're sharing, I find that when I share something that I think is important, or if we do some stuff and then I say, I really think blah, 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 then that will stay with them. And then that I'll hear it in conversation later. So it might not be a question so much with them, but they're trying to fit it in to where they are in their life, which is what teenagers are trying to do in general, is with their peers and the support of their community, figure out their place in the world. So I think just be prepared for the questions to come up. Even I can remember one kid I had in my youth group. I call them kids because I believe that children are children till they're 18. But one of my youth it would be weeks later and he'd say, remember when we talked about blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, so that each person is different in the way that they will process this information, apply it to themselves, and then bring it back to check and see if it makes sense. So that's my experience with my own children and with my youth group, who were children that I taught in godly play. So I also use the wondering questions in really everything that I do in youth group, because I'm trying to help them remember those stories that are in their bodies and in their minds that they've heard before. And using those questions helps them to access those stories. So
Miriam, can I cut in and make a
please.
note about wondering questions? Just
yes.
For anybody who isn't already familiar with the curriculum, Godly Play, the questions pretty much all start with I wonder, and actually they don't end with a question mark. It's kind of a statement because there is no one right answer. So Allison gave a few examples, but I wonder if you had a favorite part of this story. Or I wonder what part of this story is especially about you today. I wonder if there's any part of this story that we could have left out and had everything that we needed. Those type of open-ended, the focus is on open-ended questions, not one right answer. For it to be an authentic, wondering question, you as the adult can't already have an answer in mind. So that's just a little bit more wondering context.
Yeah, and I apologize for my camera being off. My Wi-Fi was getting a little glitchy. So when that happens, I turn my camera off, but I will try to keep it on as much as I can. So I apologize about that.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide? Because I feel like there was something else that yes. Okay. Scott Gunn, who is my boss and colleague at Forward Movement, specifically asked me, are you going to mention Lent Madness? So thank you for this visual reminder. So Lent Madness, if you have not heard of it, is a really fun intergenerational, multi-generational way to explore and learn about saints who you may have never heard of, in a very March Madness style competition to the Golden Halo. So you can see the bracket here, which is the best way to understand it. Every day, and it did start today, there's online voting to vote for the saint that you would like to move on, in the hopes that that saint receives the Golden Halo. I'm going to go ahead right now and plug. I was a celebrity blogger this year for the first time. And I said, I don't care who you give me, just please let me have Absalom Jones. And so I am going Absalom Jones all the way. I don't really care how the rest of it plays out. I'm Absalom Jones all the way to the Golden Halo. So I think this is a really fun way. Our youth group at church gets a bracket, and we put it up, and we are the sort of keepers of the Lent Madness and the hosts of it in my congregation. But if you're at home, do it. It's fun to do with your family. It's fun for, if anyone can get involved. And online, you can read a bio of the saints. And so for me, I learn so much every year about saints that I just never heard of. And more than that, the great cloud of witnesses we don't just go from Allison, help me out. It's Lesser Feasts and Fasts, and what's the other one?
Holy Women, Holy Men,
Yes.
And then Great Cloud of Witnesses. Yeah.
That's it. It's from all of those sources. So we have a wide variety, and the way that they match them up is really fun. So I think that this is my number one suggestion starting today, of a way to get involved with some saints and have some fun, and it goes all the way through Lent. So this is a really a good one. But for us, whether you're at home or in your faith community, I think a really important thing with teenagers and tweens is giving them a way to share what they've learned. So I have been doing that with my youth group in some other topics. And when they host an adult forum, and adults are learning from them, it is just they are so encouraged by that, to get that visual that adults care about what they think and what they are learning. It's a wonderful opportunity for everyone. And it lets the younger kids see, okay, this is something that I can look forward to. I'm a Montessori person, and so it's a very Montessori approach of younger kids learning from the older kids and having something to aspire to. So that is just something that I recommend. And if you can do that at home, if you can find a way to do that, just ask them, what did you think about blah, 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 and let them tell you what they thought was important about that saint. I highly encourage that. And I think that, oh yes. So remember I mentioned that Di, and she's on this, in this session, she shared this on Facebook. I was just blown away by this. Allison, I just was astounded by what these are some photos that she shared. And so Di, please share in the comments again if you have anything else to share. But first of all, I was like, she has a morning meeting every day. I was just it just makes me feel like I have a lot of work to do here in my family. We are not doing that. But and in that meeting, they used the collect from that day's saint. So for the person who asked about what's a way that I can do it in 5 minutes, here's your way. And then she mentions that there's some artists who make prayer cards, and here's this is St. Martin de Porres. So Di, if you have some sources on where you're getting your prayer cards, please share that. And then adding saints to the canon who demonstrate God's love in unconventional ways. And I mean, it's just really beautiful. So I just wanted to share this because she just has so much, so many great things that she does to bring faith into her daily life. And then in this specific way about the saints and feast days was just something I wanted everyone to see. So thank you, Di, for sharing that.
So I think the biggest thing that I learned from that exchange that Di was having I think it was in a Forma group, was just the reminder that we have to be intentional as adults. Like we really, our kids, especially when they're younger, are taking their cues from us. And so if we don't bring it up, they're probably not going to bring it up. And so when we started it, our kids were younger, one of the things we did was created a home altar that we kept in the middle of our kitchen table. And so it just became a reminder that every time we gathered around the table, and at that point they were little, we were eating, like I was eating 3 meals a day with them. My husband was there for 2. That we had these reminders of things that we found holy. And so but the kitchen table became this safe place to ask questions. And we sort of have gotten away from that as they've gotten older, except for during times like it's the Good Book Club. Well, we're a little behind, but we've been participating in the Good Book Club since January 1st. And so we're reading a little bit from the Gospel according to Mark every day, and then sometimes skipping a couple days and then making up for it. But so it's still, we come together around themes. And so I love the idea of coming together with, all it would take is just looking at the calendar the day before and seeing who's up next on the Saints calendar. And Sattucket, the website was shared earlier by somebody, and that's what we use at Grow Christians as a quick online resource to see what's coming up next, read a biography, and figure out what nuggets we can take to share with our kids. I wanted to highlight too the intergenerational component of this. My church is really small. And so when we meet in person, we would have one formation class, and that it's for everybody. We are small in numbers, but also small in space. We only have one room. And so any formation class that I was teaching needed to be appropriate for everybody. And so anytime there was a feast day that was coming up, we would have an activity. And so what's happening in the picture down below is the Feast of the Holy Name. And we made ornaments of all the different names for Jesus that people could then take home and put on their tree. And then for Candlemas in February, we would roll our own candles and then take them home. And then that could be used. Again, hands are busy. Like that's a big pattern in my life. We are not a family who celebrates St. Lucy Day, but a lot of members of our Grow Christians community do. And so the oldest daughter gets up really early with the dad and makes these amazing breakfast treats in the kitchen. And then with a candle on their head, the wreath, they carry them up to the mom who is in bed, or whatever your household looks like. But I know that it's been a really meaningful way for the kids to give back to the parents in this. And so this family, this is from Bingham Powell, and that is a felt wreath. But when they had a teenage daughter in the house, she had a live candle wreath. And I think they have a battery operated one as well. But it's a way to have people get involved. And it's a little bit more reciprocal that way with some of the Saints days. And then we too are also Lent Madness people, and my kids are younger and they love the humor that comes with Lent Madness. And that's been a really fun way to teach them. Some of the language needs to be changed or toned down a little bit for the younger kids, but it's easy to do if you're the adult reading it out loud to them. And then Miriam, will you say something about the finding saints or feast days near your birthday or your name saint?
Yes. So actually, this is an intergenerational thing that we do at our church at Calvary. Is is more in years past. I honestly can't remember when we did it last, but we would have a family fun night. Well, we have family fun nights on the first Friday of every month. So in October, the family fun night would be, or in November, the family fun night would be, definitely October. I apologize, y'all. On Saints, it would be the All Saints family fun night, and we had a whole Saints fun. It was elaborate, but a part of it was that each child would choose a saint, or each adult could too, if anybody who wanted to do this. And we would learn about that saint. We had resources, print resources, and some visual resources so that folks could learn about their saint. And then we had all kinds of art supplies to make shields. So you would make a shield based on your saint, and then we would carry those shields in the procession on All Saints Day, the Sunday closest to All Saints Day. So in front of everything was everybody who made a shield and wanted to march. So it was all ages, and it was a lot of fun. And it's just a great way to connect. And so one of the ways we would encourage people to choose their saint is to find one who was either on or near their birthday, who had a name similar to them, just something personal that you can connect to, so that it's just your way to relate to that saint, and to and our Catholic brothers and sisters do that, and siblings do that. I went to Catholic elementary school, so that was a part of how we related to saints, was finding a personal connection.
So who is your personal saint, Miriam?
Well, actually, it turns out that that's who Tim assigned me as my other saint for Lent Madness, and her name is Miriam. And you can read about her on the Lent Madness page. It's fascinating. I can't even get into it, but
okay. I was born on the feast of Mary Magdalene, so she's my girl.
That's mine
Allison,
too, in general.
Yeah, do you have one, Allison, that you have like a personal connection with?
I really don't. Like, we haven't done that in our family. We definitely have some favorite saints, and Mary Magdalene is definitely one of mine. I have an icon that one of my friends wrote up there with the egg. Love it. But yeah, we, in our family, we tend to, we're drawn to a lot of the younger saints. And so, or the people who ministered to children. And so that's been, that's been a fan favorite. Oh, and then Harriet Tubman is by far my daughter's favorite saint. And so when she won the Golden Halo last year, that was like, her dream. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
All right. So we already have a couple of questions that I've been holding on to, but if you have another question, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. We do want to save some time for these guys to go through the resources that are on that slide. I saw Miriam kind of addressed this question. If you, during this time or after COVID tide, are making a video for families, like a quick 5-minute video, do you guys have other suggestions on, if you're doing a 5-minute video about a saint, what you would do in that 5-minute time span?
Yeah, I think that finding an engaging way to tell the story is going to be the most important part, especially for younger kids, and knowing how busy everybody is. If I was a parent of a young child, I would like it to just already come to me ready to either share like with the language I needed, or to just have the child watch. And so putting it in their words would be great. There are so many great saints and holy days resources that we will share, some of our favorites. And then some reflection questions, and then maybe a little activity for them to do afterwards, and just suggestions. I don't think that you have to spend any time putting it together and showing them how to do the different activity. Miriam, do you have anything else you would add?
Yes, I think if you can find a good picture book on that saint, like I was just I know right down here somewhere near me, I have this one on Harriet Tubman that I've been telling everybody, put all your other Harriet Tubman books away, just put them back, and this is the one that you need. So if you can find one that's high quality and excellent, I would read that. But also Church Next, I was part of a group that did using Meet the Saints. Was it using Meet? Yeah. No, it wasn't Meet the Saints. It was another resource similar to Meet the Saints. So this is what I'm suggesting. Use Meet the Saints. And there's the little story that you can read. And I think that would be the right length of time for a short video. and it also has some questions, and there's a whole curriculum that's tied to it. So you could pull some of that out for some questions to add to the video.
Awesome. So Emily noted that as kids get older, it's important to find a way to get their buy-in. And I was wondering if you could each speak to your experience of like getting the buy-in from the kids and how that has looked in your family or church. Because I think sometimes youth is not my area of expertise, but sometimes it's hard to get the area to get the buy-in from a youth group to do something. So
It is hard. I'll speak to that one. It is really hard. And I think that's where one way that I try to do it is, and I guess I've had the benefit of being with a lot of the teenagers who are in my youth group, really I think all of them, that I was with them in their earlier formation. So I can say, remember when we talked about this, remember when we talked about that. So I admit that that's it, that's just something that is a huge benefit, that I have that relationship with them. But I think it really goes back to ask them, talk to them and ask them what they want to do and what they're willing to do, especially right now. With my youth group, we are these teenagers are, in a lot of cases, barely hanging on in a lot of ways that we might not see. So I think making it about them is the thing to do, and just be realistic and just meet them where they are, and don't worry if they say, they don't want to do it, or they're not ready for that right now. That's all right. But I think finding feast days and saints that have current relevancy, so anything related to social justice or just justice in general, maybe starting with those, that so that you can connect between things that are going on right now that they might be seeing in the media or experiencing. They can connect that to some of our holy people.
Allison, what has buy-in looked like in your family?
Yeah, I'm not a youth person either. My oldest just turned 12 this week. And so, I mean, really, we have the same benefit that Miriam named with her youth group, is that we've been doing this since they were little. And so now it's just this fun thing. Like, they know that on Epiphany, we're going to chalk the door, and that the person who did it last year doesn't get to do it this year. And so we just have some like these kind of family traditions, and even the things that aren't traditions. It wouldn't be strange for me to introduce a new saint into their life because we've been doing it for so long. At this point in the pandemic, they don't really want to do anything. And so there's not a lot of buy-in, at all. But what we have learned right now, just like so many adults are cooking meals that they ate when they were kids, or like our kids just want comfort food. And sometimes that means watching VeggieTale videos of saints instead of like reading an age appropriate book about them. They just want things that they remember from when they were younger, and to have that warm, safe feeling again. And so what I've learned during the pandemic, especially over the past few months, is that even if I think something is too babyish for them, it's not right now. And so we're going back to a lot of picture books that we had put away into a storage room, but have pulled them out.
That's important observation, Miriam.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry for just because I get excited when the words picture and books are used together. I've been doing work with our Becoming Beloved community work here in my diocese, using picture books to dismantle racism with adults. So please do not underestimate the power, and I do say a good picture book. You have, please, there's a lot of bad ones, and there's a lot of bad faith-based picture books. So they're not all equal, but when you find good ones, I read picture books to my teenagers. I read them when they will allow it. I will read them, and I've been reading them to adults. And I think when you've got the beautiful art to rest your eyes on while you're listening, all of those things enhance learning and will make that deep impression that you can then revisit. So, or that you can, follow up with questions right there in the moment or come back to it. But I am a huge fan of using picture books with all ages. So just you're never too young for a good picture book is my mantra.
And you're never too old, right?
Yeah, old, that's what I meant. Yes, I'm sorry. You're never too
Goes
old.
both ways. Is there, I think one of you mentioned, what list or calendar do you use to like look for what saint days? I think you might have mentioned it, but I missed it.
I use Settucket and I put it in the chat earlier, and I can paste it again, but that's what I use. And I like it because it includes even I call them the saints in the brackets, but it's got everybody. And so you're going to have a wide variety of folks. And so you get their collect and a little bio on them. And so that's why it's got kind of everything right there in one place, along with the scripture readings for that saint, because that's another access point, is getting into the scripture that is tied to that feast and saint day.
Mm-hmm. And every general convention, at least all the ones that I've been to, the general convention of the Episcopal Church approves another list of like saints, and that would include some of these more uncommon ones. And so that if you just Google that, Cloud of Witnesses, General Convention 2018 Episcopal Church, it'll come up as a PDF. And so I also have that, and it has two different lists in it. And so you have the calendar at first. And so you can scoot down to see like who's coming up next this week, if you're trying to look ahead a little bit. And then also down below is all like the good, juicy, detail, informative stuff. And then also I don't have a prayer book near me, but in the beginning of our, Book of Common Prayer, we have the liturgical calendar. And so that's going to have the major saints' days and then also some of the major feast days as well, like Pentecost and Easter, and then also all of the saints, most of the ones that are in the Bible will be in there too.
So let me ask you one more question, and then I do want to leave time to get to the resources because there's some really great stuff, and I want you to have the opportunity to comment on things. But in terms of equipping parents or adults that are, godparents, grandparents, if some of our folks on here today are clergy or, a children's minister, how would you go about helping parents begin to do this at home?
I mean, this is a little selfish, but I would definitely recommend growchristians.org. It has been going, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years at this point. And so we have a very rich archive, and you can go down, like on any WordPress site, go down and look at the bottom and search by month and year. And then that will give you age appropriate. Like that's our big thing. It'll give you a short reflection. All of our posts are written in first person. It is not a how-to. Like we are not telling you how to do something better. We're telling you what our experiences have been. And then hopefully you can share with us and things that have gone well, and the things that were total flops. And so a lot of them will have an activity or a reflection question at the end. And then some of them are really just more of a reflection. But I think that that's a really great place to start. And you can even like do a search. So if you wanted to look at one of these calendars and then find a name that looks interesting, then go over to Grow Christians and search for it. You could do that.
Awesome. Miriam, anything to add to that?
No, I'm just, when we get into the resources, I think that's going to help answer that as well.
Okay. Let's move to that. So Allison did say a little bit about the blog. yeah, take it away with the rest of these.
Yeah, so the first one we've already taken care of. Growing Christians is the book that Miriam's got it. It's up there on the screen. This was published last fall by Forward Movement, and it's kind of a best of the real, like the major feast, fast, holy days, and saints days. And so it is going to have more detail in it than what you would find on our blog, though. So we've got the scripture appointed for the day, a prayer, a reflection, an activity, and then also an opportunity to learn more. So if you are the parent or the minister who's going to be doing this teaching, you can feel assured that you will have all the information that you need to be able to have a conversation in a teaching moment or moments with the children in your care. And that's available on Forward Movement's website, and it is linked in the slides, and you're going to get these afterwards. So you'll be good to go there. Miriam, do you want to talk about the others?
Sure. So Meet the Saints, I mentioned, this is part of a grant that we got at Forward Movement to create some resources. So Meet the Saints has a free curriculum that you can download. And there's also a free teacher's guide that looks like this cover that you see. And then there's a book that you can purchase, which is the family storybook. But the family, yeah, so that's the whole vibe. So you're talking about all the information that you would need, and you can see from the cover that there's a diversity of saints included. So that's one that I recommend because it's a way to share. You know, I'm a fan with younger kids. You definitely want to have like those picture books on individual saints versus a whole collection of saints, because a lot of times there's like one picture maybe, and it's just usually not designed for younger kids. So I think this though is, and it's definitely designed for families and formation folks to use with younger children. Lent Madness I've talked about, and Play Lent Madness is brand new from one of my communicator friends, Seth Reese, who made this for a congregation who wanted to do Lent Madness online. And so he built this website so you can do it, fill out your bracket online. And so just check that out. It's a really great new resource. And then I know we have a whole nother slide of resources. And Sarah put this in the chat, but please, 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 if you're not already a member of the Forma Facebook group, I bet you all are, but if you're not, join that, because you can search for a saint, a feast day, a specific person. You just fill it in the search and you will find some posts. I just put in the word saint and I found so many posts that had, people asking, what should I do? What can I do? And then you get a lot of responses. So for anything that you're looking for formation wise, please use the search that way. And for saints, you're definitely going to find that. And then Allison, can you speak about this book? Because I don't have it yet.
Yeah. So this Holy Troublemakers and Unconventional Saints just came out this past year. And it'll have, some old, very classic saints that we all know and love. But it also has Broderick Greer, who is a young priest in the Episcopal Church right now. And so it is a very diverse group. We have really loved it in our house because of the age differences, the gender, and the gender fluidity among some of the saints that they've listed. And it's not just Christian saints. And so the entries are longer than what they are in Meet the Saints, but my 9-year-old, who does not love to be read to, is able to sit and really engage with the stories, and they're very age appropriate for elementary aged kids, and they also come with a question at the end of it. And then the curriculum is now available too, and we learned about that through the Forma Facebook group. So if you just search for that curriculum, it'll pop up immediately, and that you can use with this Holy Troublemakers book. And it's a big book, and it's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about it. I saw it before it came out, and then I didn't order it, so I've got it ordered now. But and then back to Di's point about diversity of saints. Thank you, Godly Play folks, for making a Barbara C. Hare's lesson. I mean, I can't wait to get it. We've got it on order for our church, and so I'm excited about that. So don't forget about, if you use Godly Play, and even if you don't, investigate these lessons, because the lessons themselves are, the Godly Play lessons are filled with saints, but I'm happy that they are now doing these lessons on people of color.
So I think the two that they added bring it up to 14 saint stories that Godly Play has, both the story and the materials to go with. So I personally, in my children's ministry, we used those stories over last summer. So it filled 3 months of weekly stories and did a whole section on saints, and it went really well. So highly recommend checking that out. All right, somebody hit us with the last 3 who are running short on time.
Oh, just check those out. Everything is linked. Just check them out.
Perfect. So quick final notes. We hope that you will join us next month for our webinar on ministry after COVID, hosted by the eFormation Learning Community folks. What have we learned? What will we carry forward? What are we leaving behind? That will be really wonderful. So please mark your calendars for March 18th. Thank you so much to Miriam and Allison for sharing your creativity and these resources. Thank you guys for being here. We hope it was helpful. Send us feedback. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Peace.
Bye, friends.